She took a tiny little sip. She goes, "That's really smooth." I said, "How smooth is it, Granny?" And she throws the whole shot back, slams it down on the sewing machine, took a big drag off that cigarette, blew smoke right in my face, and says, "About that smooth." Well, hey, I'm John Rich. It's good to join you today. I'm actually sitting in my house in Nashville. So I guess we've kind of gotten used to these virtual meetings, even though I'd much prefer to have a guitar and a glass of whiskey and be sitting right there with you live. But it's good to join you guys.
Yeah, thanks for joining. Once again, John and Jay here. It's great to have you. And we've got some exciting stuff to talk about today. Before we get to kind of the newest and the greatest, I'd love to hear a little bit about you. You have your own whiskey brand. That's correct.
Yeah. So there's a phrase that's been around in this country a long time called Redneck Riviera, and it's kind of a tongue-in-cheek phrase that people would refer to the Gulf Coast back in the day, back in the '60s, actually the early '60s. They would say, "We can't afford to go to the French Riviera, so where are we going to go? We're going to go to the Redneck Riviera, right? We're going to go to the one we can afford to go to." And if you've ever been down there, Gulf Shores, Alabama, and Panama City Beach, and down Destin and down through there, I mean, that's some of the best beaches, honestly, anywhere. I've been all over the planet. I mean, if you said, John, French Riviera or Redneck Riviera, which one would you rather go to? I'd probably tell you the Redneck Riviera, the food, the people, the music. But the thing about it is it's affordable. People can go there. They can drive there from a lot of spots in this country. So that's how it started. But over time, that phrase really has grown into people saying, my Redneck Riviera is a lake in Wisconsin. My Redneck Riviera is a river in Northern California or wherever it might be. And it's kind of, I ask people, where's Margaritaville? Well, it's wherever you say it is, man. It's wherever you have a blender, some tequilas, a Hawaiian shirt, and some Jimmy Buffett music. Margaritaville is in my kitchen in the dead of winter if I want it to be. It's an attitude. It's a lifestyle. So back in 2008, I wondered who owned the trademark to that phrase. It's been around forever. I've called it that forever. And come to find out, nobody had ever trademarked it. It had no trademark on this phrase that
Oh wow.
probably 100 million Americans use that phrase and have for generations, but nobody had ever monetized it or trademarked it. So I was able to trademark it after a pretty thorough arm wrestling match with the United States government trademark office, and finally got it and started coming with products. So when it came to the whiskey, I've got a song called Save a Horse, Ride a Cowboy that says, buy the bar a double round, a Crown, and everybody's getting down. I'm talking about Crown Royal.
Yeah.
Right.
That's the first time Crown Royal had ever been mentioned in a country song. So Lord knows how much Crown Royal we helped him sell over the years. But, that's Canadian blended whiskey. So several years back, I was looking at that bottle. I'm on the tour bus and after a show, and there it is, Canadian blended whiskey. I said, I wonder if there's such a thing as American blended whiskey. Like, is there anything in a bottle that's called that? So I started going into liquor stores and I'd ask the guy, hey, buddy, can you show me where your American blended whiskey is? And every time I'd ask the question, I get the same answer. We don't have anything called that. And I'd be like, well, in this whole store, no, I don't think we have anything called that in here. Didn't matter where I went, nobody could seem to identify what that was. So I thought, man, what if I could come with an American blended whiskey that would beat what I've been drinking, which is the Canadian blended whiskey? If I could have an American alternative to what it is that I've been drinking, that'd be kind of cool if I could come up with that. So in 2017, I got with a master distiller out west, a lady named Mel Heim, who's done a lot of brands. She's great. And she said, well, John, this is going to be difficult because Crown Royal, being made in Canada, they can put all kinds of stuff into a bottle in Canada and call it whiskey. But if it's in America and you put the word whiskey on the bottle, it has to be 100% whiskey. So my first question was, well, my God, what have I been drinking this whole time? And she said, you don't want to know. It's all kinds of stuff in that. She said, so to land in that kind of a profile with the very limited stuff we have to work with compared to what they work with, this is going to be a challenge. But hey, let's see if we can do it. So in 2017, we went through almost 200 variations of that blend until we finally got one. It came to Nashville. I took a sip of that and I went, okay, if that's on the table, I never drink Crown again or any other whiskey like that. That might be the best thing for my palate, for what I like, that I've ever drank. but I said, we got one last person to run it by before we put this out. And that's the most experienced whiskey drinker I know. My Granny Rich, who at that point was 85 years old, been sipping whiskey since World War II,
Wow, man.
smoking the Marlboros, still running her own business, a little sewing shop, lived by herself, one of those ladies. So I took it to Granny Rich and set a shot glass on her sewing machine. And I said, well, what do you think? She smelled it. She said, it smells good. I said, well, taste it. She took a tiny little sip. She goes, that's really smooth. I said, how smooth is it, Granny? And she throws the whole shot back, slams it down on the sewing machine, took a big drag off that cigarette, blew smoke right in my face and says, about that smooth. I said, all right. I said, is it Granny Rich approved? She said, it's Granny Rich approved. So in 2018, we started bottling this stuff and moving out. So not that long ago, about 3 years ago. Today, at this date in 2021, we're now in over 11,000 stores throughout the United States. We're in every major grocery chain, all the major liquor chains. It has really, really picked up a lot of speed. I think people enjoyed the price point. If you're going to spend, 20, 25 bucks on a bottle of whiskey, that it's that smooth. And then I use American glass. I use American corks. Everything in it's 100% American. And then I give 10% back to these guys right here. I'm wearing their t-shirt today, Folds of Honor. They put kids through college who lost a parent in combat, which to me is probably the strongest way to ever say thank you for your service to a veteran or active duty service member, is to look after their kids.
Absolutely.
And so to date, guys, by the time we hit the end of 21, Redneck Riviera Whiskey will have funded over 200 college scholarships for kids who lost a parent in combat. So when you see that bottle of Redneck Riviera Whiskey out there, it's a hell of a lot more than just another whiskey. There's a lot that went into what's in that bottle, and then it stands for a lot. It means something out there in a sea of whiskey. You walk in nowadays, there's 200, 300 bottles of whiskey in there. You don't even know what you're looking at half the time. So, you'll try this or try that. But I think America is getting pretty well acquainted with what the brand stands for. And then when they drink it, they love it. And that doesn't break their pocketbook either. Back to the original phrase, the Redneck Riviera is a premium experience at a moderate price point. So my whiskey is a premium experience at a moderate price point. I grew up in a trailer in Texas. I have a high school diploma, and that's it. Nothing else. The American dream, right? And I think that's about as quintessentially American as you're going to get. I'm just a regular American guy that thinks big and works hard, and that's what this brand's about.
That's really cool. I like the phrase you threw out, that whiskey needs to stand for something. And we've seen the industry just completely explode, especially in the last, couple of years as well. So, that's really cool. And I think it's interesting too, as we see more celebrity whiskey come out, like a lot of the brands are very focused on the celebrity, not the whiskey, right? Like, so.
And they don't know. I mean, most celebrities, I'm friends with most of those guys, as you can imagine. Most of them don't actually own it. It's an endorsement deal, or they have, some kind of participation in it. But for me, I own the phrase Redneck Riviera. I own the recipe. We run the business. I mean, this morning I had a 2-hour conference call talking about logistics. I mean, just simply logistics, because, I got 2 little boys. They're 9 and 11. I'm like, one of these days, these boys are going to help me work on this brand. It's a whiskey in 11,000 stores, but it's also a state-of-the-art honky-tonk downtown in Nashville on Broadway. It's boots, it's apparel, it's a barbecue sauce now with Red Gold tomatoes out of Indiana, which is a huge tomato ketchup producer. We've got Redneck Riviera 1776 barbecue sauce now in over 3,000 grocery stores just this year. So this brand is starting to churn, and I think when you give people a great product and you don't try to take all their money, you make it affordable, and you stand for something great, like Folds of Honor and like our military and our country. I think that's a winning combination.
I like that. So were you involved with Folds of Honor before the brand? How did you come to find them, or did they find you? I'm curious about that angle, because I really, I think that's really intriguing, and it's really, kind of sets the brand apart.
Yeah. So my dad's a preacher, but he's not one of those big time preaching the big church preachers. My dad preaches in prisons. I think my dad hit, I think it was 32 Mardi Gras in a row that he went to the French Corner with a guitar around his neck, singing gospel songs and preaching to all the crazy people that come through. That's the kind of guy my dad is. And so from as a little kid, he said, you better make sure you tithe on your money. Here's $5 allowance, tithe on it. And I'm like, what's tithe? 10%. You got to give your 10%. Whether you're rich, broke, or in the middle, you have to tithe. It's not a question. You just do it. So I always have tithed on certain things. When it came to this whiskey, I looked at that and went, I'm a songwriter. I make country music. I don't understand the whiskey business yet, but I'm going to. And the fact that I even have the right to pursue happiness by pursuing a dream like that, who do I owe that to? Who do I owe this whole experience to? The men and women who have fought to keep the rights to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness alive all these many years, these hundreds of years now. So to me, my tithe on these bottles should go back to those men and women. So I ran across Folds of Honor. Lieutenant Colonel Dan Rooney is still an active duty fighter pilot, started that. I ran across a video he had put out showing these kids, and the kids are telling the story, these particular ones, about their dad who died in Afghanistan. And he's got 3 kids. And his wife, now his widow, was saying, I was in nursing school and I was going to finish nursing school when we got married, but then we started having kids and then he went to Afghanistan. So I never finished. So Folds of Honor had come in and subsidized the rest of her education and then set up scholarships for their kids to make sure they could get on a solid footing going forward. People pay a lot of attention to families when that mom or dad, especially if they're killed in combat. There's a lot of attention for a while. But once you get past 6 months or a year, people move on. Well, what about the family? They haven't moved on. They're still in a really hard spot. And so Folds of Honor comes in and picks up that slack. So for me to know that, this year, we're going to get dangerously close. We should clip $1 million now that we've given back to Folds of Honor, which that's a big number. If you were Jack Daniels, that's a big number.
Yeah,
but if
amazing.
you're Redneck Riviera Whiskey and you're 3 years old and you're out here, Dukes up and coming, you're pumping $1 million back into something like that. That's something I'm really proud of.
That's awesome. That's incredible. I thank you for diving into that. It's cool to see. And one final question before we pivot a little bit. But so Redneck Riviera, does it say Granny Rich approved, or is that coming? Is that
let's see so there's Redneck Riviera Whiskey, and that's your main go-to.
Okay.
And then there's a Granny Rich Reserve. So the Granny Rich Reserve is the same blend as the original, but it's 4 years older and it's higher octane. We actually made it 86 proof because Granny was 86.
Oh man.
Developed,
clever. Nice.
So yeah, that bottle, the last numbers on that bottle's up 78% this year around the United States. So people are starting to find that one, and it's got her image scrolled into the back glass and tells a little bit of her story. World War II, Great Depression, Dust Bowl days, the whole thing. The Greatest Generation. That's why we call them that, because they saved the world. So yeah, that bottle's out there too.
Okay,
That's
very
great,
cool.
man. You've got so many stories tied into all of this stuff, and I really like how you could take a whole backstory and turn it into not just a whiskey brand, but a lifestyle brand, really.
Yeah.
And I think something about that that's really interesting to me is that the whiskey itself has a story based in American roots, American history. Where do your whiskey roots come from? Like, what made you into a whiskey guy? How did you get to where you are as the guy who was on the tour bus drinking Crown and looking for something more American?
Especially with a dad who's a fire and brimstone prison preacher, right? How do you connect that? So right out of high school, I wind up in this band. Instead of going to college, I go on the road in a Jeep Cherokee, pulling a U-Haul trailer with 4 other guys all over North America, from Vancouver to Southern Florida. I mean, I'm literally everywhere. Didn't go to college, went out and made music. That band turned into a band called Lonestar, which wound up being a multi-platinum country band. That's where I wrote my first songs. But you're looking at a guy who's 18, 19, 20. I'm not old enough to drink yet, but they are. They're definitely old enough. So, they would bring me something. They go, "You want a drink?" I go, "I don't even know what I drink." So they'd bring me this and I go, "It's too." When they brought me a Crown and 7 one time, I went, "What is that?" They go, "Crown and 7." I go, What is Crown?" They go, "Crown Royal." Man, you don't know anything, So I like that. And, that, and then wine. I'm like, nobody drinks wine. Wine tastes like gasoline. Yeah, if you drink wine at a honky tonk, it does. But if you go to a dinner with a radio station and it's on their tab, they actually order a good bottle of wine. So I started learning about it from being out on the road. I didn't come from a family that had the wherewithal to ever go to a restaurant like that or do anything. So that's kind of where I got into it. And over time, I tried different things. Crown was never totally perfect to me. It's got a terrible finish. It actually, I asked Mel Heim, the master distiller, I said, what is that I get on the end of Crown? She said, pure grain alcohol.
Neutral grain
Said,
spirit.
what? There's PGA in Crown Royal. She said, there's PGA in Crown. There's vodka in Crown. She starts going through it. I went, oh my God. I haven't even been drinking whiskey really. And so when I got to mine, all the things that I didn't really like about Crown, I was able to come after those things. The nose, the finish, the way it would blend with other things. And of course, having that easy roll on the back instead of that roll, I was able to address all those things and really have a proprietary blend. I mean, what is in my bottle is not in anybody else's bottle anywhere. And I'm proud of that. And most people, even what we'd call, guys like yourselves who know whiskey inside and out, they'll take my bottle and go, that's a pretty good daily sessionable whiskey right there. How much is that? $23.99. Wow. You would expect something to burn you up for that price, but it really stands head and shoulders above its competitors.
Absolutely, man. That's very good.
I love it. Cool. Well, thanks for diving into that. Now, we're told you have something new on the horizon coming up. By the time this airs, it will have come out, but you're on the pursuit of something new. Would you like to clue us into that as well?
Yeah. So I've got a show called The Pursuit. It's on Fox Business Network, which I think that makes me the only high school graduate on Fox Business Network. I'm kind of proud of that. Kind of proud of. There's a lot of PhDs on that show, on that network. But the show stemmed from something I was saying on stage at Big and Rich concerts. I would say, America doesn't guarantee us happiness. It guarantees us the right to pursue happiness. And the whole crowd just goes, yeah, every time you say that, because they know what that means. That means, America owes you nothing, but it offers you everything. If you want to work really hard and think big, you never know what might happen. It's why there's lines coming in and no lines going out of this country. Everybody on the earth wants to have a shot at the American dream, or just a shot to exhaust their own personal potential. But unfortunately, the vast majority of this planet lives in places that, because of their government or wherever structures are around them, they're not allowed to exhaust their potential. And that's a real waste of a human spirit in my mind. So America gives us that. So I wanted to interview people with The Pursuit from all different backgrounds. I don't care what their politics are. I don't care what their opinions are really about most things. Is this a person that has worked really hard, has taken advantage of the American dream? Have they struggled? How did they get through that? Nobody gave them anything. They built it with their own two hands. And throughout these stories, guys, you run into people that you've probably seen interviewed 100 times, but you have not heard it framed like that. Like the way I ask them questions, it's not really about their success. It's about what's inside of them that yielded such great results. How do they think? How do they work? How do they deal with disappointment, failure? How do they deal with success? That's another big one. A victim of your own success, man. There's a lot of those stories. So by the time I'm through with that interview, you have really had a deep dive on somebody, and hopefully the audience is inspired by it. When they wake up the next morning, they're looking at their own personal life and what they're trying to take on. They go, hey, I'm looking at a tough situation, but that show last night, man, that guy went through some tough stuff, but let's go. Let's go. It's meant to remind Americans what we still have in common. Because a lot of people would argue there's nothing we all still have in common, but that's not true. We do have things in common. We have the rights to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. And we should root for each other to be successful in this country, no matter if we disagree with them or not on other subjects. That's what this show focuses on.
Oh, that's very cool. I like that you're digging into, behind the success, right? Like, media just typically covers like this person is successful and, maybe a little bit of the background, but digging into, the past and the motivation and overcoming, typically hardship to make that happen is great. So when does this start rolling out? This is coming this fall, right?
Yeah. So every Wednesday night, 8 Central, 9 Eastern, there'll be 2 back-to-back new episodes of The Pursuit every single week. And, something to the point you just said, we're doing a real disservice in this country to the young people by only highlighting and celebrating success and making them think that instant success and instant gratification is the way to go. And if you don't get instant satisfaction and recognition, then you should be upset about that. You should pitch a fit. You should you should throw a tantrum. That's not doing them a good service. That's not going to help them become something great down the road. Pointing out people that are very successful, but then diving down into how did they get to be successful? There's nobody out there that's really successful for a long period of time, especially, that doesn't have some real nuts and bolts that have been put together and torn the engine back down and built it back again and torn it down and built it back until they are what you're now seeing as a successful end product. There is no story that somebody just snapped their fingers and did it. And so we got to remind people of that hard work has integrity. There's integrity to laying down at night and being exhausted. You know, that's a good feeling to have. And if you've never had that feeling, you're not truly living. And that's what this show is going to focus on.
I love
like
that,
man. That's great. I mean, I'd love to applaud you for using your platform to do that and to stop glorifying instant success and things like that. I think that's great. It'll be really good to see that that twist on everything too. And I think that shows in all the products that you're putting together. Really, a real A to Z approach. I like that. That's great.
Yeah, it's just the truth. I think, you know, in the world of marketing, that's where this is all coming from. That, hey, look at this star, look at this athlete, look at this business guy, look at Elon Musk, look at whoever, all these big time guys and gals, but they never go back in and show you the blood and gut story they had to go through to get to that point. So all the young people are just thinking, hey, if I can just get enough Instagram followers, I did something. No, you didn't. You didn't really do anything. You know, go out and do something that means something that will be around longer than you will be. That's always a great test for somebody is, will your Instagram page still count after you're dead?
Right.
No, it will not. But if you build a business or you help other people or you grow a family or you put things out there that are bigger than yourself, they'll outlive you. They'll outlast you. To me, that's a real test of what real success is.
That's a great perspective to have, especially, you know, John and I, we're in the whiskey industry every day, and it's really interesting to see, you know, brands that come and go, people that come and go, some people that, you know, are like, you know, I want this because I have X many followers. And we go, well, you know, what else is going on? And they're like, oh no, that's it. Like, I just have a lot of followers. Like, give me this, give me that, you know? So I think it's interesting that you're trying to look beyond that.
I think superficiality like that, it can take you a little way. It can take you a little bit. Hype can get you there, can get you a little piece of that distance. But man, you can't hype them into buying it twice if the product sucks. Mm-hmm. You can't hype them into buying it twice if they realize, oh, this guy's playing a game over here. You know, in a world that becomes more fake by the day, if you can bring real McCoys to the forefront and stick with it long enough where they can depend on that product or that person behind it going, that guy's never changed. That product's never changed. That is a continuous, constant thing. I can hang my hat on that. That's where you build brand loyalty. That's where you get a consumer base that won't leave you, and you get to build it bigger and bigger and bigger over time. Over time, nothing happens overnight, as we know.
And that's
especially not in the whiskey world, right?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Time is the great healer of all things in the world of whiskey. But before we go ahead and wrap up, I'm just curious. I know you, with your season coming, you've spoken to many of your guests already. Can you give us a little sneak peek on maybe one or two guests that you've had you know that the public is going to get to see soon, or you know anyone that you've particularly enjoyed or had a fun story?
So man, it is a wide range of people. So Richard Petty, the king of NASCAR. I mean, who gets to sit down with Richard Petty for 2 hours and ask him anything you ever wanted to ask him? I mean, to find out the genesis of NASCAR was really his dad and a bunch of other hillbillies out in North Carolina running moonshine up and down the back roads, outrunning the police. And they were all bragging one night, who's got the fastest car? They decided, well, let's just race them one time, you know, and then you find out they're racing convertibles, no tops, no seat belts, and they're going 140 miles an hour around a dirt track and flipping them over. I mean, just to learn the genesis and a real historian like that about something as big as American racing is pretty incredible. There was another guy named Robert Sherrill, who nobody knows who that is, but you're about to. This guy sold over $2 million worth of crack cocaine in Nashville over the course of about 3 years. And one night he sold a bunch of crack to an undercover cop. Cop busts him. He goes to federal prison for 5 years. While he's in federal prison as an 8th grade dropout, no less, he starts educating himself on philosophy, finance, business, psychology, all these great things. He gets out 5 years later and he's seeing all these buildings being built in Nashville and thinks to himself, they're going to need people to clean all these buildings. So he starts a janitorial service. Well, now he has over 1,000 employees working for him all over the state of Tennessee, and was pardoned by the governor of Tennessee and then pardoned by Donald Trump himself on the final day of his presidency, and brought him all the way back with all of his rights restored. And so the question is, does the right to pursue happiness, is it still available to somebody who sold crack cocaine and went to federal prison for 5 years? The answer is yes. They still have a shot at it if they want it. That's the beauty of America and the beauty of that promise that lies the Declaration of Independence.
Oh, that's incredible.
That's an outstanding headline. Wow.
It's a good show, guys. You're going to like it.
Yeah.
And I would say in closing, if anybody's wanting to find my whiskey, I said, 11,000 stores. All the stores are on redneckriviera.com on a store locator. You put in your zip code and you'll find the stores basically everywhere now in America. So if it piqued your interest, go pick up a bottle and let me know what you like it.
I love it. I mean, you're practically doing our job for us. That was going to be my next question. Where can we hunt down?
I didn't want to assume you would do that.
No, I love it. I'll take a good layup. That's great. And if folks are interested in the pursuit, where can they catch that again?
It's on Fox Business Network. So every cable, satellite TV has it. If you miss it, just hit that on demand thing and go, The Pursuit, John Rich, and boom, it'll pull them all up. I think you'll be inspired by it. And I think it's one of those things you will not change the channel while it's on. These are extremely dynamic people and extremely incredible stories.
I love it. Well, I think that sounds extremely cool. Thank you again for sharing your time and the story of Redneck Riviera and The Pursuit as well. So if you're looking for the whiskey, you know where to find it now. And check out The Pursuit as well. I know that I'll be giving it a look. I love a good story, and that's kind of, what makes whiskey so interesting for me is the stories behind it.
Pour yourself a little Redneck Riviera whiskey and sit back and watch The Pursuit, man. You'll
get the full experience
if you're doing that.
Rock on. I got to hunt down some of this Granny Rich approved as well. I'm really interested.
Granny Rich approved. Yes, sir. Thank you for your time, guys.
Yeah, thank you.
Much, sir.
PX has so much sugar that if they, in 30 years, remake Jurassic Park, I expect that they will pull a mosquito out of like a PX sherry vat.
There'll be PX Amber.